Okay. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Welcome. You have joined the community forum that has been organized by this wonderful group of sisters here to respond to the Eid violence that happened at Philadelphia Masjid. And inshallah, this is a forum that will, one, allow us to, as professionals, share some information. And we are not simply professionals, we're also community members. We have a deep love and care for our people. So as community members, as healers, as believers, this is a space that we really felt compelled to open up for the community to just gather together, to understand that as often as we might be privy to or experience violence in our communities, it is never okay. It is not something that we ever simply adjust to or say, oh, that just happens. It's painful, it's hurtful, it's disappointing, it's upsetting. And so inshallah, what we can offer in this space is an opportunity for us to sort of begin to make sense of what happened, while also providing resources and support that can continue to help people make sense, right, of what might seem senseless very often. So again, you have joined the community forum in response to the violence at Sister Clara Muhammad School on Wednesday, the Eid. And joining me today, my name is Dr. Kameelah Oseguera. I am the founding executive director of Muslim Wellness Foundation. And joining with me are the women who are responsible for also organizing this space. Dr. Taliba Foster of Line Psychiatric, Sister Farida Boyer, who's a licensed marriage and family therapist and founder of the Black Brain Campaign, and Sister Tasnim Sulaiman, who is a licensed professional counselor and the founder of Black Men Heal. So we are all Black Muslim clinicians. We are all Black Muslims who deeply care for and respect and want to provide support to our communities. So we're going to begin by providing some information. And then, of course, the Q&A is open. So if there's a question that you have, a comment, something that you want us to respond to, perhaps, please feel free to put that in the Q&A. And so what will follow over, inshallah, the next hour or so is some information specifically that we each would want to share with you all as a resource. And then we'll open it up. We want to, again, explain that the reason that we wanted to open this space is for us to gather. And there is something really powerful and healing about being in a space in which people are trying to come together and make sense, but also provide comfort and support to one another as well. So, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Again, we want to invite you to be here and to be as present as possible. We will each take a few moments, or more than a few moments, perhaps about 10 minutes, to share some relevant piece of information that we hope acts as both informative, but also coming from a place of sincere love and care for the community. It's distressful, it's disturbing, it's upsetting, it's embarrassing, it's many things. And so perhaps together we can help build a more coherent story about what happened to help make sense. This is also news that didn't affect just the local community. It was state news, national news, international news even. And so there are a lot of eyes on Philadelphia Muslims, Black Muslims in particular, which adds another layer of stress. And so we want this space to be for us, it's by us. We are here as, again, servants, believers, healers, and being able to offer something, inshallah, that is meaningful for everyone who is gathered here. So what I'm going to share just very briefly is some terminology, some language that can hopefully, again, help us begin to think about what we are experiencing in our bodies, what feels perhaps still unsettling, right, even after so many days later. These things take time. So I would encourage you all to be very patient with yourselves, to breathe, right? To understand that when something unexpected happens in this way, we often don't know what to do. We don't know what to feel. We don't know what to think, but we are never alone. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is with us. We are with each other. And I firmly believe that in our community, we have everything we need in order to be there and to care for one another. So inshallah, if you'll bear with me. And again, what is often sort of a disclaimer is that this is general information that we want to offer to you all as support. And we encourage you also to begin to think about how you might connect with resources, therapy. The experts on this call can certainly provide support in being able to connect with therapeutic sources, counseling that can be ongoing, right? This is not a new quote unquote problem for us in the community, but it is one that has shaken many of us to the core because there are some specific elements that are just, again, very unsettling, very disturbing. So this community forum includes, again, the founder of Black Men Heal, the Black Brain Campaign, Line Psychiatric. And so this is general information. There might be some particulars to your situation that doesn't fit what we might offer. So we encourage you to continue that exploration in the best way you can with a professional, and also including those who are supportive for you and your own healing. So before we begin, again, I want to encourage everyone to say Bismillah in the name of Allah and to breathe. This is a time that is perhaps still feels like you're in shock and disbelief. It's confusing, it's infuriating, but we can always call on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we can always breathe and not take that for granted. So I want you to just listen to the invitation here to breathe. Breathe in and out. Breathe in. So breathe it in, let it out, let something go. Perhaps you've just sort of arrived here to this space and you're thinking about maybe what you're going to make for dinner. You have obligations, you have, people that you're caring for, but allow yourself to be here and to breathe and to sit and to gather with others who are also concerned. And I want to lift up this hadith in that Allah says, I am as my servant thinks of me, and I am with him when he makes remembrance of me. If he makes remembrance of me to himself, I make remembrance of him to myself. If he makes remembrance of me in a gathering, I make remembrance of him in a gathering better than it. And I want to remind this or offer this as a reminder so that as we talk about things that may bring back memories or experiences or trigger you in some way, to remember Allah. And in that remembrance, right, we are taught through the hadith that when there is a gathering in which Allah's name is invoked and we're in remembrance of him, that there are angels that descend and fold their wings around this gathering, right? So we're here virtually, but the sentiment is still the same. So when you find yourself, perhaps your heart is beating fast and you're having difficulty concentrating, to breathe, to remember Allah, right? And to remember that we have everything we need, inshallah. So it's only been a few days since what happened the gun violence, perhaps you're still plagued by flashbacks of where you were, what happened, the noises, the sounds, what you were wearing that day. These are all things that might be reminders of how difficult it is for you to continue to kind of move through your day as if everything is normal. So I want to just offer a couple of definitions, and then I'm going to turn it over to my sister Farida to offer additional guidance. When we talk about trauma, it is very general, right? It depends on the individual, but there are some things that we can sort of pinpoint as to what might cause a traumatic reaction to an event. And it is often these four things. Something happens unexpectedly. You were unprepared for it. You felt powerless to prevent it, and it happens repeatedly. So if you think back to Wednesday, if you think back to what happened, it was unexpected. No one could be prepared. Everyone might have felt powerless, right? And in fear. And it is also something that has happened in the city, in our communities repeatedly. And when we experience something like this that overwhelms our ability to respond to it, to cope with it, it can cause a traumatic reaction. So some of the symptoms of acute stress, right, which is a form of stress that follows a traumatic event. So within 3 days, perhaps up to 4 weeks after a traumatic event, we may have difficulty sleeping, difficulty eating, concentrating. You might find yourself being more irritable, moody, or perhaps you're even feeling numb, right? Everyone is saying, well, how are you feeling? What are you doing? And you feel detached even, right? That you feel this sense of distance from what happened, or maybe it's difficult to even recall what occurred. Something that is also a hallmark of this acute stress is feeling like something might be a reminder. Maybe it's a smell. Again, maybe it's a sound, something that you see, someone's voice, and you start to think and remember some of those experiences, right? Where you were you trying to run? Were you on your way there, right? Were you trying to reach someone? After a traumatic event, you may replay these things over and over in your mind, and perhaps you even do it in your sleep, right? And it feels like you're having nightmares, or you wake up and your heart is beating really fast. And these are the memories that keep flooding back. So I want to encourage you to take a deep breath. And another. And just, think about where in your body maybe you're feeling tense, you're feeling like, you're clenching your fist, you're clenching your jaw. Take a deep breath in and exhale. So there are three things that I also want to point out here. Is that this violence that happened at the Masjid on a day that is just full of celebration and anticipation and excitement and joy, there is a loss that we might also be feeling, right? Loss in that we assume that there is safety at this joyous gathering, right? We assume that, perhaps I have to be more vigilant and conscious of what's going on around me. But on Eid day, children are playing, people are talking, people are relaxing, having fun, they're laughing, gathered together, and we don't expect something like this to happen. So it's a loss of what we assume belongs to us, which is safety, which is a community that can be celebratory and joyous without something like this tragedy occurring. So there is also a grief associated with that loss. And what I want to lift up here for us as Muslims, and as Black Muslims in particular, a disenfranchised grief, right? Perhaps the way that we are perceived puts us outside of expressions of sympathy, of empathy, of care. Perhaps there are assumptions about who we are as Black people, that we are violent, that we're lazy, that we're animals. So when we're grieving this loss and this tragedy and this violence, perhaps that is even sort of perplexing to other people who are thinking, well, shouldn't y'all expect that? Right? This is the perception that others may have of us, so that they don't even maybe understand the grief that we feel. But we have to name that there is grief and loss, because this is a violation in many, many ways. So there is sorrow, there is distress, there is disappointment. And sometimes that sorrow might be expressed as anger. Like, I'm furious, right? I'm not sad, I'm angry, right? These are all things that we have to be able to name in order to understand how to cope with it better. And Allah says, so lose not heart nor fall into despair. So I want to turn it over now to my sister Farida to offer additional guidance and to offer also information about the Black Brain Campaign, which is based in the city of Philadelphia, that has been offering therapy and services free of charge to the community, and what many of us might want to take advantage of.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you, Sister Kameelah. I appreciate you all just getting together at a short notice to even put this together. I know that we all have a responsibility as clinicians, as Muslims into the community. And when I called you all, you answered, jumped on a call at the drop of a dime, and put this together in less than 24 hours. So I'm grateful to have your supports for that. One of the things that I wanted to talk about is the stigma against mental health. This was a traumatic experience that most of us face, because even if we weren't there on the day of the Eid, your family, your friends, somebody you knew in the community was there. We had gotten excessive amounts of phone calls, text messages. My sister called me hysterically. My niece was in the henna line trying to get henna, and with her father, who was also a police officer, that was at the Eid just celebrating, and he can't contact his daughter. So one of the things that I want to make, the Black Brain Campaign's mission is to eradicate the stigma against mental health in the Black community. And that's why we offer 12 free sessions to anybody in Pennsylvania who needs therapy. We want to make sure that you have clinicians who look like you, who understand your language, and can offer the supports and services that we need. This, as we've been saying, is a traumatic experience. I was on a phone call. I am a alumni of Sister Clara Muhammad School, and have been there for all my life. Even when I did not attend, I was there on the weekends for Girl Scouts or for whatever events that they were having. And it was a place that we all congregated to on the day of the Eid. Even if you didn't go there to pray, you were going there to meet somebody after to engage in the festivities. So it just, it hit us all hard. And as members of the community, we want to make sure that you all are supported and have the help that you need. It's a difficult situation. I was able to go to Juma prayer yesterday, and I was glad to see that it was a full house and people were not afraid to come back. It was, security was tight in the area, but as Muslims, we believe in the qadar of Allah, and whatever is going to be is going to be. So I'm grateful that people were there. As a community member, it's important for us to be a support for one another. On April 27th, the Masjid wants to host a community event so that we will be present, providing resources, having clinicians on site so that you are there to have somebody to speak to. In the meantime, like I said, Black Brain Campaign offers 12 free sessions to anybody who needs it. You can go to our website, which is www.joinbbc.org. It's a link that says free therapy. You sign up for the free therapy. Put in your information, and one of our assistants will contact you and assign you to a therapist. It's important that we all heal from this. We cannot. I'll share a story briefly. I grew up in West Philadelphia, and it was May, I think it was May 10th, or I know it was in May, I think it was Mother's Day. They dropped a bomb on the Move House. And it forever, I was at the corner store, me and my friends were at the corner store buying candy or whatever we were getting. But now today, I realize that helicopters is a trigger for me. Once Dr. Kameelah talked about triggers, hearing helicopters gives me an instant headache. So for a certain amount of time, if I hear them, I have to leave a space, because that's what it was like when we grew up on 61st Street. It was just helicopters and tanks and all kinds of things. So it's triggering for me. And that day, I want you to try to pay attention to some of those symptoms, because you probably will, if you were there, you will probably experience some of those symptoms at some point in your life. The reality is, we are living in a state of chaos. It's violence every day. You turn on the news, somebody is being shot, killed, murdered. You can go into a school and ask any of the children, do you know anybody that's been shot or killed or murdered? They're going to raise their hand, because that's just the reality that we live in. It's unsafe. We want to make change. I encourage anybody who wants to make a difference. You can reach out to me via email, fboyer@theblackbraincampaign.org. I do a lot of work with elected officials, and we are trying to put put procedures together so that we can make the city a better place to live in, to work in. It's unhealthy that we have to go through this every day, and we just want to be a support to the community so that everyone is healing. We will have many resources available. If you need things to happen before April 27th, when the event is hosted, as I said, my email address, I'll make sure we put it in the chat, that you can send me an email. Many people inbox us on Facebook, Instagram, whatever it is that you need to get in touch with us. We will try to work together to make sure that you get the resources that you need.
Thank you, Sister Farida. I wanted to, I guess, ask if you could share a little bit more, especially around what a trigger is, right? You said just the sounds of helicopters can, kind of bring you back to a moment. What might people need to know about those triggers, what they mean, how can they make sense and cope with it?
So as I said, like, the helicopters were the trigger for me. It took me back to 1985 when I was at the corner store, and hearing those helicopters, we were afraid. They dropped bombs, so the ground was shaking. So if you could have been as I said, in the henna line. So maybe seeing henna can become a trigger for you, because now I know I assimilate, and this is just an example. Seeing henna might be a thought of somebody's about to do a shooting. You don't know what the triggers are going to be for you, but I encourage you to pay attention to figure out. It may be a sound, it may be a smell, it may be a taste. You could have been eating some food and some good fish from the school, and it's like, now I never have a taste for fish again. Or when I smell the fish, it can be a trigger for you, and you don't know what that trigger is going to do to you. You don't know how it's going to make you feel, but I wouldn't, you don't know how it's going to make you feel, what it's going to make you think about. But whatever, if you feel something that's abnormal, that you're not used to feeling, it's probably triggering you to have a different type of feeling. So pay attention to that feeling. One of the things that I encourage, especially parents, this is another thing that I want to mention. We have to really be attuned to the younger children, because a lot of times we don't ask them questions like, how are you feeling? What are you doing? Or even when we do ask them, they say, I'm okay. If you Google feeling words, you're going to get a list of feeling words. You can even get, for younger children, there's some faces and expressions that can come up. And I encourage you to share them with children. Find some words that connect to the whatever emotions that they're having, so that you can get a better understanding of what is actually going on for yourself and for the child. Checking with them very often to see what's going on, how you feel. Do you remember what happened? Have a conversation with them about it. And those are some of the things that we plan on doing in the next few weeks to make sure that we're addressing the adults, the adolescents, and the children, so that there are resources put in place so that everybody can get what they need. So just to answer the question again, a trigger can be a smell, a taste, a symptom that you feel that is abnormal, that can take you back into that place where it makes you feel uncomfortable. It can give you a feeling of sadness, anger, or however you feel about the incident that happened. And it, to be honest, it can last a lifetime. I told you this event happened in 1985, so it still triggers me today to hear those helicopters. So but it's important for you to get the help so that you can understand what it is that you're going through. So that's why when we talk about the importance of therapy treatment, we want to have clinicians available who you can process those thoughts and feelings with. If you're having a triggering moment, that it doesn't go unbothered, that you can actually explain it to somebody who understands what you're going through, so that you can be able to process it and get through it.
Thank you. And I think, one of the sort of, it's tragic because we're meeting under these circumstances, but I think one of the beautiful things about the community is that we do have experts, right, that can help explain. And sometimes this terminology, this language that's everybody uses, right? Oh, I'm so triggered, but sometimes I don't know what it means. So thank you for offering that really simple explanation. And I'm hoping that, people who are listening and there's some questions, but that they can start to notice, like you said, right? Something, maybe my heart starts to beat faster and I have no idea, like that never bothered me before. But now if I see too many people, right? Or if I see too many young people gathered, it makes me nervous, right? And so just being able to identify some of the moments that people recall and they start to feel afraid, right? Or they feel like they're right back in that moment when it happened.
We don't talk enough about the diagnosis in the Black community. Anxiety and depression is one of the top diagnoses in the Black community. So those triggers that we're speaking of can be brought up again by but you may see those symptoms of anxiety and depression just going through that experience if you're triggered by some of those things. So that's why it's important for you to pay attention to it. I tell people all the time, write it down in the notes section in your phone. Right now at 7:57, I feel my heart palpitating, and it's lasting for about 5 minutes. So then when you get to therapy or you get to see a psychiatrist, that you can explain to them what is actually happening for you in the moment.
Thank you. I'm trying to keep up and offer some of the things in the chat so people can follow along, because I know it can be a lot to take in, but this is being recorded. I just want people to know it's being recorded. We'll put all of the information together so that you know how to reach each person and follow up on those free therapy resources as well. So shukran, thank you, Farida, for that.
Sure.
I want to now tap in my sister, Dr. Taliba Foster, who is the medical director and founder of Line Psychiatric, to also offer some guidance around what's happening and what people might be feeling.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for having me. Before I get started, I do want to thank Farida for reaching out. It's literally been 24 hours. She reached out, gathered a group of women, group of sisters who understand that as Muslim women, that it is our responsibility to uphold the community, to nurture the community, and to take care of the community when they're in peril. So I want to thank you, Farida, and then Kameelah, Tasnim for coming, Kameelah for putting this beautiful presentation together. Tasnim, everyone for just coming together. I appreciate it. And I appreciate you guys including me in the conversation. So just to continue on what Farida was saying and what Kameelah said earlier, I just want to talk briefly about trauma. So my name is Taliba Foster. I'm a child, adolescent, and adult psychiatrist, which means that I went to medical school and I am able to prescribe psychiatric medications and also provide therapy. So I want to talk briefly just about trauma, just how it affects your body from a medical standpoint. So we as a people have been disproportionately affected by trauma. The geography, crime, income, discrimination, education, and like Farida said, most importantly, which keeps it all a secret, stigma. Because we are affected by traumas that way, we're constantly in crisis. It's chronic. Kameelah talked about the acute trauma, the event, which happened on the id. But that was superimposed on our just daily trauma of every day. Gaza, the elections, being Black, trying to pick your child up from school, just there are 1,000 issues, 1,000 reasons why we are hypervigilant. We are actually functioning now in a state of crisis, which means that your central nervous system is up and ready to go. Just waiting for the next shoe to drop. So when you come to the id, and the thought is, again, like Farida, I attended Sister Clara Muhammad. My mother was the first resurrection. I don't know if people even know what that means anymore. But that's where I grew up, Clara Muhammad. So many janazas that Clara Muhammad was just the hub where no matter where you were, everyone would come back to Clara Muhammad. No matter what masjid you decided to go to, everybody would still meet at Clara Muhammad. So it became like a sacred, neutral masjid. So when everyone came to the masjid to let their burdens down, to relax, finally, there's a shooting, and then you become even more hypervigilant than you were prior to going into the masjid. We know now that if you are exposed to continued trauma, it causes physical issues, psychological issues, and behavioral issues. So from a physical standpoint, you get chronic health conditions. Your brain development in children is impaired. They don't think as well as other children. Their cognition is off. Psychologically, emotional health is not good. Problems with cognition, problems with socializing, social difficulty, which is why kids are trying to solve things not by talking, but by violence. They have impaired brain development and problems with socializing with each other. Then you have to look at behaviorally. It causes delinquency, substance abuse, and abusive behavior. So those are the effects, no matter where you are in the world, that if you are under chronic trauma, these things will happen to you. The good thing is, that was the bad news. The good thing is that us sisters, we got together in 24 hours, and the community is also alert and ready to go, calls for action. Like Farida said, there's another event on April 27th, but we're a resilient group, and where there is great crisis, there's great opportunity. So do not despair. This happened, but we are going to take our city back. We are going to take Clara Muhammad back. But we all have PTSD on some level. Okay, let's just be honest. Whether you're, racial justice, COVID, there's a lot of fallout. And while it would be excellent for you to come to therapy and be, even think that therapy is a thing or that therapy works, that's not realistic. Also, we know that there aren't many culturally competent therapists. So people who speak your language, people who, you don't have to put on airs for, you can just be yourself and, be your whole self and bring your whole self to session. So if you're not quite ready for therapy or therapy isn't available to you, what I'd like you to do in the meantime to help with your PTSD are a few things. The first thing is I want you to make sure that your family feels safe. however that looks for you, that you are trying to, pull your family together in a safe place. If you can. If you can't, seek help from the community to make you feel safe. The second thing is I'd like you to maintain your routines. Don't change. If you were going to Clara Muhammad, I haven't been to Clara Muhammad. I'm going back. Okay. Maintaining my routines, maintain your routines. Do not go off track. Encourage activities. Try not to isolate. Although you're afraid, others in the community are afraid to come out to the community. When you're talking to your children about these things, be brief. We don't have to revisit the shooting. Be brief about the trauma and then the solution. What are we going to do moving forward? Take breaks. We don't have to talk about the actual guns all the time. We can highlight the big important points, but you don't have to revisit the event over and over, especially with children listening, because they internalize it. No new responsibilities. Don't take on nothing new. Okay? You're already traumatized. This just made it that much worse. No more new responsibilities. Nothing else. Try to take something off of your load, because this is a load that you're now carrying. I'd like you to encourage family discussions privately. Doesn't have to be publicly, but talk to each other about this. Doesn't have to be at work. If you talk to people privately, so that you can encourage using the words that Sister Kameelah said earlier, or talking about the triggers like Sister Farida said. And then from a physiological point of view, note the symptoms. So like I always, my three things, everybody who sees me will tell you. I always ask people about their mood, their sleep, and their appetite. And just as Farida said, if there's any change from your baseline, you used to be this way and now you're this way, that's a change in your baseline. So if there's any changes in your mood, you used to be happy, now you're sad. You used to be joyful, now you're angry. Any changes in your sleep, you can't sleep, you wake up in the middle of the night, or you're sleeping too much, or your appetite, you're eating too much, not enough. Everyone is different. So in order to see if there's a change, it has to be a change in your baseline, not the person next to you. But helicopters don't feel good to Farida because of that. Now it's funny she said that, because I was thinking, I was at the bus stop waiting for the bus when the bomb dropped for the move. The bomb, because they started in the morning and we could hear the gunshots like and it was echoing. And I can hear it and see it clear as day. And I was standing at the corner store at 61st and Media, waiting for the school bus. So when you got triggered, that triggered me. And that's part of the community. So just like I'm now saying, Farida, look, I've known you for this whole time. Who knew? We shared this common trauma. This is why it's important to communicate with other people who look like you, who are able to talk like you. The other thing I want you to pay attention for, if you notice that there's been an increase in nightmares, that's another symptom. If you're just quick to anger, drug use, alcohol use, just to sort of zone out. The kids today, they use a lot of pills, a lot of medications to zone out. It's overwhelming. It's, to be in a constant crisis. But just to wrap up, like I said, we could call a friend, make salat, dicker, move around, go outside, and seek support from all of these sisters here who have given the last 24 hours to make sure that we can provide you with support. And that's it for me.
That was really helpful. So I'm adding what you're saying to the chat, and hopefully folks can see that. And I do again want to follow up with one question, if you can explain.
Sure.
What would be the difference between acute stress and PTSD, right? Because I think even PTSD people have heard and may even self-diagnose. But as a psychiatrist, right, you have criteria that you would use when
Gosh,
seeing.
here's my DSM for it. And we all have it. We all made it. Whoever made it through COVID has PTSD.
Okay, so
Basically, so if you're looking at it, so like Sister Kameelah said, one event is usually an acute trauma. It can be a weather event, it could be a shooting, it could be, that you witnessed something. If those symptoms aren't resolved, making me try to remember back, was it 30 days? I believe it's 30 days. It then becomes chronic. If that's not resolved, if you're continuing to have those symptoms 6 months, it becomes PTSD. Let me check, because I have not, this is a board question. I haven't taken my boards in 25 years, but I believe that's what it is. But we as a people are living in a constant state. So basically it's just timeless, acute, chronic, and then post-traumatic. And usually the difference between the chronic and post-traumatic stress, PTSD, is flashbacks, nightmares, you avoid the spot that you were there. There are triggers, you have issues with depression, you have issues with anxiety. It could be many different things. But that's usually the difference. For acute trauma, it happens, but you're able to rally and get over it. The constant assault, which again, geography, income, discrimination, education, stigma. And stigma is the one that's one of the most important, because no one wants to talk about it. Mm-hmm. So if you don't talk about it, then it doesn't exist.
I just want to add one thing. When you talk about from acute to post-traumatic, what usually happens is when you don't do anything to address the acute problem, it escalates into the trauma. And that's with anxiety and with depression. And that's why we encourage you to get help as soon as possible, so that you can address the issues as soon as possible, so that they don't escalate into something long-term.
But again, we can heal from this. I don't want this to be like, oh, it's just, we've been through harder things as a people, but this is a good sign and a good symptom that we need to tighten up in our community, in our safe spaces, our sacred spaces, and I love when you said, Sister Kameelah, we have everything that we need in our community. It's just a matter of, being able to say the words, not be afraid to talk about it, and to seek help.
Thank you so much. And there might be some people on the call who've never met with a psychiatrist. They've never met with a licensed professional. So they may even have ideas like, well, if I go to your office, should I lay on the couch? Right? I mean, all of that also contributes to the stigma, right? Mm-hmm. People just don't think I'm crazy. Well, or maybe they'll think that you're doing what is best for you so that you can be healthy. So I think in talking about it, I want people to also remember that the sister Taliba Foster, psychiatrist, also said, pray and go to therapy. She didn't say just do either or, right? I always say all of the above, right? Mm-hmm. We have been given all of these resources, and it is a mercy from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we should never think that, or if you've experienced going to a therapy session, or you've encountered a clinician that did not take into consideration anything at all related to who you are as a Muslim or as a Black person, then perhaps that's not the best fit. But a person who is culturally competent, is what Dr. Foster said, is someone who understands that there are layers to what you've experiencing, right? Not just now, but over time, generationally. And so you will need all of the resources at their disposal in order to be able to meet both the acute and the chronic stress that you might be experiencing. So thank you for that. There were so many gems, and I tried to capture them as many as I could in the chat. So I want to bring in Sister Tasnim Sulaiman, who is the founder of Black Men Heal. She is also a licensed counselor and has been doing some amazing work actually around gun violence prevention with youth. So I want to give you the floor.
Yeah, thank you, sis. Assalamu alaikum to everybody. I am obviously here with my sisters. They called me about, trying to respond to this tragedy. But first and foremost, I'm here as a community member. And when we first got on the other day, I had to take a moment with them, my helping professionals, to vent my own feelings of trauma, my own feelings of hopelessness that was creeping up. and they were really helpful. And so like, it's actually helpful to be here because processing, I always say the process of naming what your experience is a part of the healing. So the introduction to me, I'm born and raised Muslim here in Philadelphia. So if you're Muslim here in Philadelphia, everybody knows that Sister Clara Muhammad is a staple. As far as my father, brother Ayub Suleiman, was passed on, we've spent many Eids there, you know, marriages there, like you said, funerals. It's a part of the community. And I was with my family on that day. We weren't there, but it was just really heartbreaking. And it put a dent in that day for us. And my co-founder, Zakia Williams, whose family was there, you know, like we're still just dealing with a lot of the aftermath of that, of getting phone calls from people who were impacted. But her nephew, an 8-year-old boy, witnessed, like was standing right there as somebody was shot, and he saw the person fall, and he ran and he got lost. A lot of kids got lost that day, and then the parents couldn't locate their children because the kids had ran. And his mother, who wasn't there, the father called the mother, couldn't find the mother, and she drove to try to get there, but the traffic, you couldn't get in that vicinity. You couldn't get in or out of that vicinity because of the traffic and the police response, which alhamdulillah was swift. And community response was swift. Let's not forget that the community that was there on the ground also joined forces with police that day to have swift responses. But so we're dealing with a lot of that aftermath still. And so I wanted to talk about that night of, it was already scheduled, but that night of the shooting, Wednesday evening, where we have been in development, Blackman Hill, of a gun violence program for youth, to answer one of the questions that was in the chat about where can a youth go to deal with these gun violence issues. So we have a program called Gun Violence Group Therapy, and we are presently implementing that program at Level Up. Level Up is one of the places in the city. It's in West Philadelphia, led by Pastor Aaron Campbell. It's one of the places in the city that 600 to 1,000 kids per week go to Level Up. It's an incredible space where the kids are fed and they dance and they do all types of things. But we're working with a group of about 25 youth right there for a small group therapy. And I would say about 50% of our group members are Muslim. And you know, Pastor Aaron called me that day, did we want to cancel? And I was like, no, absolutely not. So we went. That shooting happened in the afternoon, and at 6, Blackman Hill was at Level Up doing that group. And then the next morning, we were doing the gun violence group program for a group of brothers here who are also at high risk of gun violence. So that is one of the things that we're going to be talking about in our responses on the 27th. Blackman Hill will be there, but, want to talk about whether or not like we need to just implement this gun violence group therapy curriculum with specifically at Clara Muhammad or within the other youth groups. So if you're out there and you have a group of youth, or if you service a group of youth and you have a need for this program, you can get in touch with me about that and we can come out and do that. They said so much that, I kind of want to reiterate or talk about as well. Oh, that's what I forgot to mention. Blackman Hill. So Blackman Hill, I started Blackman Hill 5 years ago. And the reason why I started something as a therapist that really centers Black men, and it's not necessarily to decenter any other group or population, but how many of our adult men 18 and over, there's a lot of program for youth, there's a lot of program for women, there's a lot of program for community, but something that is very intentionally centering Black men was important for me. And so what we do is we provide free individual therapy for Black men, but we pair them up with culturally competent therapists because it's very hard to find therapists who can relate to your unique needs. So we provide 8 free therapy sessions, and we also have 2 free support groups. So for my parents out there, for anybody who's 18 and over, we have one for men that's free called King's Corner. That's every Sunday night at 7 p.m. And we have one for the sisters called Heal with Him, and that is every Saturday at 11 a.m. And they're virtual. And so if you're not actually ready to step into an individual therapy space, if you're not ready to make that level of commitment, what I love about the groups is we have people from all over the country who join these groups, but you don't have to be on camera. You don't even have to speak. But again, being able to hear, and I promise you, you will. Every week there's a different topic applicable to mental health issues. And every week you're going to hear someone else speak your story that you may not have been able to name or speak for yourself. And even that is freeing for you, because it's like listening to a song lyric or listening to a soar, and the bar is like, oh wow, how did they know? And so that's what I really love about the group. So you can sign up for all of these resources at Blackman Hill, whether or not it's the individual therapy or the groups. And for the youth, we have this gun violence program as well. So they had talked a little bit about the trauma, PTSD. We also, Blackman Hill, we also have a partnership with Penn. A couple of our providers have been trained in prolonged exposure, which is for extreme PTSD symptoms. And so if if somebody's having extreme symptoms and it is really impacting their functioning, their day-to-day functioning of work, or being in relationship or doing the things that they need to do, they could also contact us for that. And that could be men or a woman or children for the prolonged exposure. But the one I've been, tasked with building this curriculum, right, for the gun violence program, and trying to take what we all know on this as the panel, like this clinical language, and how do you translate that and make it relatable to our community and especially to our youth. And one of the things that I've used, Dr. Foster and Farida and Dr. Kameelah have already talked a little bit about trauma and some of the symptoms, but one of the things I wanted to talk about as far as the symptoms that you're experiencing, the way gun violence has an impact on mental health, one of the biggest ones is desensitization, numbing, and being numb. And so somebody had already mentioned, like, your kids might not be talking about it, so you might think that they're fine. But what I'm finding from working with these kids in the groups and like being able to hear from them directly, by the way, several of the kids that Level Up are gun violence survivors, which is and have been witness to a lot of gun violence as well, but they're numb to it. The way that when we first went in to start the program, they were talking to us about, oh yeah, when my friend was dying, I held him in my hands and had to call his mom and I tried to lift him up, and their stories are just so horrific. Their stories are so horrific, and they're talking about these things as common as the weather. And I mean, not now that we're implementing the program, like now they breaking down crying in these groups, because the groups are they are very intense. But when we first started, they were desensitized, and we had to teach them, like, that's not normal. It's not normal that every day that you so many people have been shot or that you have been shot. That is not a normal situation, and it's unfortunate that they're living in Philadelphia right now feels like a battle zone for some of our youth. And when they were talking about the trauma and the way that trauma changes the brain, one of the models that I use to try to explain to the kids there is it's a model of like using your hand, right? And when you're impacted by mental health is also a big cause of gun violence, because people who are pulling the triggers, believe me, they are impacted with the part of their brain that says fight, flight, or freeze. It's the survival brain. It's the threat center. It's almost like an alarm is going off the whole time, and it's real loud. And so you don't feel safe, and everything is perceived as a threat. And it's why we're like all at a loss, like, wait, because we all of a certain generation, all of us of a certain generation, we don't understand, because we like, all right, yeah, back in the day, it used to be shooting and stuff like that, but it's a different level of disregard and disrespect now that none of us understand. Like, we're like, wait, these kids, like, they just don't care. Like, how could they not be thinking? But it's innocent people around. How could they not be thinking, wait, no women, no children? How could they not be not trying to have some regard for safety or community, right? But when you think of, so if you look at this, my fist right now, and it's almost like a brain, the amygdala, which is the part of the brain that is the trauma brain, that is the survival brain, that's at the base of the brain at the bottom. And that's your fight, flight, or freeze. That's the thing where the alarm is going off when you're feeling like, oh, I must, so like a freeze would be like a numb, like, okay, I'm not going to do anything. A fight is I have to react, right? our flight is, I gotta run. Like if somebody come in and shoot and we don't have time to ask no questions, we just gotta go, which is what happened the other day. So, but the thing about the brain and the way the neurons work is the neurons go from the bottom of the brain, the base, to the top. So if this is the amygdala and it's at the base, and then if you want to get to the top of the brain, which is the prefrontal cortex, this is where we make decisions. That is where logic and reasoning comes in. So a lot of times if you are in this part of the brain and the neurons need to go up to the part where you think, hey, wait, maybe that wasn't a threat, or wait, maybe I shouldn't, react. Maybe I shouldn't react with a fight or a shooting. That part of the brain is not even getting accessed because only this part, it's like a real loud alarm that's going off. And so, what I am experiencing with the gun violence groups is recognizing that we're working with the most vulnerable populations they're most at risk of being shot, and they are also most at risk of being the shooters, because we can't forget that these are kids. A lot of times these are kids that are shooting, and they're also traumatized. And so mental health is a huge, not only is gun violence having an impact on mental health is having an impact on gun violence, because it's mental health issues, untreated. Let me mention that. We all got mental health issues, like Dr. Foster said. If you here today, if you on this call, congratulations, because you have survived the worst of your days. You survived everything. But I almost guarantee that there is some level of mental health that has been impacted by the experiences that we've had in the world. It's almost impossible. Like you can't get out unscarred right now in the world that we live in. And that's why treatment is just so important. And I'm just so grateful to be able to be providing that treatment to our community. And just to be able to be a part of this group with these sisters and trying to see how we can respond to our community. And I am a big believer of those closest to the problems of the community or those are the closest to the solution. And that's what this is, because all of us are from Philly, right? All of us grew up Muslim. I don't think you can get any closer right now to this type of event than what you have on this panel right now. So I'm grateful to be here. Dr. Kameelah will make sure that you guys have our information. You can go to Blackman Hill to sign up for any of those services that I mentioned. And I'll make sure that you guys have my contact information as well.
Thank you so much, Tasnim, for that. And I also tried to capture some of what you shared in the chat. And it made me think about a question that I hope each of you can answer. Because of the chronic stress, right, is generational, the trauma that we've experienced and now younger people are experiencing in very particular ways, even post-COVID, what would you say is perhaps something that is viewed almost like a culture trait, right, or personality trait that is actually a symptom of trauma, right?
Yeah.
So even some of that, like desensitization, like, oh, I don't feel nothing, I'm strong, like this don't bother me, that's not normal.
Mm-hmm.
We should be allowed to feel all of the things that we're feeling because this is distressing, it's disturbing. But sometimes the response is, well, I have to be stoic, I have to be strong, like I'm not going to cry about this, or else I'll be crying forever. So something like that I think people might need to hear, right, is either a reaction to trauma or untreated mental health, but almost has become something like that we don't view in that way, right? It's kind of like a collective reaction or expression that sometimes we have to be able to say, no, that's not healthy for us.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense? What I'm trying to describe?
Yeah. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Great.
I don't have anything off the top of my head. I think that like when you described it, we all are just becoming so desensitized to it. It's just like it's happening every day. So even the response is just like it's like a telephone call. Oh, you know, such and such passed away, like or got killed. Like it's just that it's become that normal, and you don't. before you were reacting a different way, and now it's so normal that your reaction is just not hysterical as it probably should be. As a clinician, just as a mother, wife, whatever, it's overwhelming. It's just overwhelming to hear this every day. It's a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot to take in.
It is. I agree. I do think it's extremely overwhelming. I think one of the go-tos in the Black community is let's beat those kids up. And I think that's something that we should probably address because they're already beat up by things that we never experienced. Talking to kids every day gives me the opportunity, like Tasnim, to just get a glimpse into their world, and it's just so different. But I'm optimistic. I think we can get over this. I think we can get through it. I think that yes, we are demoralized at times, but we're talking about it. This never happened. People didn't get diagnoses when I was little. People got spankings. You know, I have ADHD. Who knew? You better sit in that seat, sit down, Taliba. Get up one more time and watch what happens. That's how my ADHD got. Fear is what fixed my issue, whatever issue it was across the line in the whole family. Whether it was being late, whatever it was, you know, fear that, and it works, but it's a different world now. And it's a different world that we live in. And I think that the go-to, like Tasnim said, like is us old school, like, oh, well, that worked for me, it will work for them. And I don't think it works anymore. They don't, a lot of the children, I mean, people say, oh, they're all on drugs. The world is moving so fast for them. So fast. And just to jump on what Tasnim said, not only the amygdala is there, but the prefrontal cortex, which makes all your executive functioning, in boys doesn't develop until they're 25. So even if they do have the neurons, which they don't, to get there, there's nowhere to go. So up until that point, it's just, you know, drug, sex, rock and roll, basically. Whatever they want to do, whatever impulse I feel, that's what I'm going to act on. So you're asking a lot of there's a lot of the children are dealing with an undeveloped brains, which is why we're also fighting for children not to get life sentences as adults when they do crimes as children because their brains are not developed. So it runs along the same vein. I think that would be my thought.
I also wanted to share the opposite of that desensitization when you're numb is hypervigilance. That's hyper aware, hyper on edge, hyper reactive, right? You know, I often say like all of these police shootings of unarmed people is a result of also trauma, hypervigilance, fear. Like fear is at the base of a lot of gun violence, right? But I just wanted to share this story like that this group that we're doing, this gun violence group with of men, they're adult men, 18 and over. They have been justice system impacted, and they're a part of this group at P3, Pushing Progress Philly in Germantown. And the other day, it was the very first day that we implemented the gun violence program and this is a story of a testament of how important it is to feel safe. Like healing can't occur if safety isn't there. How important it is to feel safe in your body, because trauma, it changes your brain, but it lives really heavily in the body, right? And then the body is, when the body is reactive, it sends signals to the brain, or if the brain has a thought, it can send a trigger to the body. And so they work in conjunction, right? And so sometimes it's important to try to get safety in the body so that you can heal the mind. But the other day, we were in between two groups. We were doing the gun violence group for the brothers at P3, and then we were about to start doing King's Corner, a different group for the brothers. And I come in, and the brothers were playing. And it's been with me. I've been carrying this really because it was a beautiful thing to see that my facilitator, who's amazing of that, this brother Kyle Morris, he had them playing. They had a paper cup and they were just in two groups and they were just throwing a cup around. And I took a video and I've been looking at their faces and it's joy in their faces. They just was free. And even the staff was like, we would have never been able to get them to do that. We don't know how y'all got them to do that. But it was a beautiful thing because I'm thinking like, it's not much difference. Wednesday night, we do level up. It's the youth. Thursday mornings, we do P3. It's not much difference. They just older, right?
Mhm.
And how much the brothers at the P3, it was just such a beautiful thing because after our very first group, they were almost childlike. They said, can y'all come back every day? Are y'all gonna be like the people that say they gonna come and they don't really care? Are y'all gonna be the people that just keep coming and give this trauma? They knew the language because they've been in programming. They were like, are y'all gonna just be doing this trauma bonding and trauma informed care stuff? But what they really wanted was like, do y'all really care about us? Do y'all see us? Do y'all love us? Can you help us make us feel safe? And those to me are the prerequisites of healing. And that's what I love about Black Men Heal, because that's what it's about. It's about like, how do you create a sense of safety for our men first? Because, and Dr. Kameelah brought this up the other day when we was on a call of how there are leaders. I know there are leaders on this call, community leaders. I never considered myself a community leader. When we get these type of calls, when there's a trauma, I'm just a psychotherapist, right? But because we're doing this work for the community, we are community leaders because we get them calls, right? And so people are looking for you to lead something, but we need it too. Everybody needs it. Everybody needs this treatment.
And I just want to reinforce that point because there are folks on the call, and I would remind, even when you are responding to a crisis and that adrenaline kind of like propels you, and perhaps you're not sleeping very much because people are reaching out and saying, what are we going to do? Or this is what happened. I need support. I want to encourage the leaders, like both who have formal titles and also those who people turn to quite often in these kind of circumstances, to also know like where you can get your cup filled, right? Who's watching, right? And paying attention to how you're sleeping, what your mood is like, whether or not you're eating, right? Are you drinking water, right? Are you staying hydrated? So all those are things simple things that can become or get neglected when we're experiencing a crisis is also important, as Dr. Foster said, to maintain a routine, right? If you were going to go for a walk, go for a bike ride, right? Just take a break, take a nap, like do something that can also help you regulate your body and your emotion better. If you're so exhausted that you can't think, you can't make good decisions, right? You're just not in a place where you can be as effective and as helpful and as supportive as you can be. So I want to invite, there was someone who raised a hand, there were questions. So if you have a question that you want to just speak or just something that you want to share, I want to give folks an opportunity to do that before we close out the space today. So I saw a hand of someone named Otis Redding. So I just bumped you up so that you're able to talk. If you still have something that you would like to share, please do so. And then next I have Brother Bilal Qayyum. Brother Otis?
He's on mute if he's trying to speak.
Feel free to unmute yourself. All right, maybe you stepped away. But Brother Bilal.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes. Assalamu
Assalamu
Welcome,
First of all, I am very glad I'm on tonight and listening to your comments. Because of it, four sisters being on, and as a male, I really appreciate the comments, and I'm learning. One of the things I try to do is learn every day, even though I'm in my elder state of my life. But I just wanted to make a comment, two quick comments. And I'm sorry that I see the sister from Black Men Hill. I think she's off.
She's still on. She probably can hear you.
Okay. I was at the park before the shooting happened. And I went, in my question, I put it in about we have to engage the youth. I saw immediately when I was at the park, there was the elders, older folks were more towards the mosque in the street eating. The young folks were all up in the park towards the top of the park, towards Gerard Avenue. And what I do a lot of times is I go out, even when I'm in the streets, I speak to young folks. That's when I made that comment in the question about engagement. I literally went up and saw the different groups of guys standing around, and I went inside their groups, gave my salams, and shook each of their hands. A lot of them were surprised that I was doing that, because I realized, once again, they're all up on the top of the park, but nobody was coming up and talking to them. So that's why I do that. But I also felt, and I guess this is part about the feeling about trauma, something was not right in that park. I got the feeling that something was going to happen. I didn't know what it was. So I left and I went up to 29th Street, to the eve up at 29th and Lehigh, from Philadelphia, Germantown, Masjid, and they literally hundreds and thousands of kids up there. And they were acting up, which nobody talks about. But what I realized when I got up there and I got the call, there was a shooting. I wasn't shocked. Well, I was more shocked about the shooting and how it happened. But I wasn't shocked that something would have happened because once again, my street knowledge, I picked up that something was going to happen. And I was going through a thing. I was going to come back to the park, and I said, no, let me just go. I've actually came home because I didn't want to be in that kind of mix at that point. But the second part of the point I really wanted to make is I go to the Juvenile Justice Center every week and talk to the young men. And Thursday I went in and I went into the pod where they hold the young men. And I went into what they call a sight and sound unit. 9 guys were in there, all 9 guys, 8 Black youth and 1 Latino. They all were Muslims and all of them had murder charges. So I wanted to go in that unit that particular day because I wanted to talk to them about what happened Wednesday. And it was interesting in the conversation and some of the stuff I've been hearing that you're talking about. Folks, young men they really don't see hope. And I'm assuming, since I'm talking to folks who deal with this, that's a trauma issue. That's a mental issue. I asked them, I kept probing them, what can be done? All of them kept saying to me, nothing. It's the street life, and this is just the way we have to live. And if someone takes a friend of mine's life, I'm going to retaliate to get him, or vice versa. And once again, you heard me say, all 9 of them have murder charges. The last conversation I had before I was leaving, one young man said to me, you got to understand this is generational and we need a new generation to break the cycle, which I found out very, very interesting for him to say that. But what I find out when I go into the Juvenile Justice Center every week, the key thing that I find out, these young men don't have hope. They really don't. And that's what we got to break. And part of breaking that hope is we got to engage them. And I know about the Liberal program. The minister out there is doing a tremendous job. I know about Black Men Hill. I go on those sessions on Sundays a lot since she started it. But I really believe that part of the solution is going to be is how do we really, about young folks, how do we really have a process now to have an open process to engage them and have discussions with them on all kinds of levels. My last comment is quickly, and I talked to Ryan about this. We got to concentrate on how to build families again. The destruction of the families is causing a lot of problems we have now. I talk a lot about white institutional racism, how it affects violence. Black men are isolated. Black men don't feel they're going to be, anything in this country because of the white racism that's going on. So all my discussion now, I always bring up the issue about white institutional racism and also how we can rebuild families. Last comment I really want to make, and I don't know if you all have experienced this.
Brother Bilal,
I'm hearing.
Brother Bilal,
Hold on,
that was the last comment.
No, I know, but let me just quickly say this, because this is going to be a directly. I'm hearing from the young men that they dislike their mothers as much as I'm hearing from them about the dislike for their fathers. That's new. That is a new phenomenon in our community. They talk to me, and I'm not going to say the words they use, against their mothers, like they talk about against their father. That's a new phenomenon in the Black community because mom is always the staple of the community. So we got, as we move forward, we got to look at all this conversation that they're giving to figure out how we're going to move forward to really begin to solve a lot of our problems. And all of it's probably related to mental health issues. That's my last comment. Thank you for allowing me to share.
All right, alhamdulillah, thank you. There's another brother, Sharif Petty, who also had something that he would like to share. Assalamu alaikum.
You're on mute, Sharif.
Can y'all hear me?
We can hear you now. Yeah.
Assalamu alaikum.
Like,
Can you hear me? Y'all can hear me good?
yes.
Yes.
Honestly, it's scary. This is scary, scary. Like, I'm talking about, like, for men, the brothers, like, just like the brother just said, talking to the youth, like, some of them looking for love. Most of them are scared to death. Like, nerves are, and I'm from Southwest, so, like, we just got a kid that died last night. We so numb to it, like, you don't even stop past the house and see the people no more. You give them their days and just kind of like, like, it's to the point now, honestly, like, I asked the question, like, I knew that was capable. I didn't expect it to happen at the end, but I knew it was very capable of happening because of the war going on outside. Like, it's a deep war going on. Like, some of them be generational, but most of them I'm learning now is mental. It's like they suffering. The drugs, and I'm gonna stand on the drugs first. The drugs, maybe problems at home, the men, and it's still some good men around that talk to the young boys, but most of them, like, they'll turn on you. So it's a thin line that we gotta stay at with them because you don't want them to think you're against them and rooting for them other guys because they slick with it and they don't care. Like, they don't, like, that whole Southwest massacre that happened. I just left my brother. It was one of his sons. He's so traumatized. Like, his other son is traumatized. He won't come outside. And I just had my own experience alone. Like what she said, like at Black Men Hill, like the layers of trauma as they lay up, and once their brain crash, like, it's just like it amazed me how it happened to me because I'm like, wow, like triggers. Tinted windows are a trigger for me. Tinted windows. Just by watching the shootings and stuff that happen. And the guns that these kids got, honestly, are military style type guns. These are military style type guns. I'm telling you straight from I'm in the jungle. These are guns that cops don't even own. So my whole thing be like, like how they get these guns, like, so quickly. They get these guns so quickly. And
Sharif, I have a question. Sharif, I have a question for you. What do you think you can do to make it better?
honestly, me, you know what I started out by doing? Giving them salams and speaking to them and talking to them and just trying to get to the, see where my generation went wrong. I'm 48. A lot of these are my friends' sons that's getting killed. My friends' kids' sons, they getting younger and younger and younger. Like these kids really, they 13 and they from 13 on up, and they really can shoot a gun. Take them apart by way of YouTube, put them together by way of YouTube, and then they get the songs. And then you have honestly, this my biggest question. Radio station. Y'all play this drill music and y'all know what's gonna happen. But for the views and everything else, they monetize. And at the end of the day, the songs and some of the songs they play, people get killed right after these songs. And it's scary. Like it's really scary. Like for me, I isolate myself to the point where it got bad. And I'm a trooper. I'm still gonna go outside, but I'm so aware. And something told me, like at the school, not to go down there. I don't know if it's like hyper awareness or just my nerves. I'm like, no, something's going to happen because these guys, like honestly, you can't go to them candlelight visuals. You can't really. I'm skeptical about going to janazas, and that's bad. Like I'm almost scared. I watched that Upper Darby Cemetery fill up so quick. It scared. It was like out of body. Within a year, I'm talking about like 30 kids in Southwest, like all friends, like you may know, or connected to people, and it's layers of trauma.
So, Brother Sharif, thank you for sharing also about kind of the symptoms that you've experienced and what you've observed. And I also want to encourage, I guess, especially in this space, to acknowledge some of those feelings. I think there are times when we want to move to what might be a solution, right? But even you said just talking, right? That I think, we're thinking there has to be some kind of billboard size, right, solution. But if it's just, I give salams, hey, how you doing? I mean, for some of those children, they're children, right? No one ever asks them sincerely how they feel, right? And so if you're feeling some kind of fear about how they may turn, right? I mean, there's something that's very, I'll just say it, very evil that happens in a community when we're afraid of our own children. There's so many things that have broken down along the way, and it's more than just drill music, right? There's so many things that have deteriorated. And at the same time, there are so many things that we continue to do well because all of our children are not shooting each other.
Yeah, no, can y'all can say hear me?
Yes. So there's someone else that has their hands raised, but I just want to thank you for sharing and also continuing to do those small things, right? That may help you break your own isolation, but also help reach, right, a child.
Can I just ask one question? Can I just ask one question before I go?
Very quickly.
And like another thing, like when we asked to go talk to the youth, they put us through all this stuff when honestly, we're the closest to them.
Yes. So tell me your question.
How can we get into the youth study center faster to kind of get in these kids' ear, like, because it's going down fast, and that's it.
So, okay. So I would say that's a bigger conversation, but I also wonder, like, in our own family, in our own circles, who are we talking to? Right.
Yeah,
and
we got our nephews and all of them.
We want to reach, the kids who are in the youth study center. We want to reach them there, but there are children that you are connected to, I'm sure.
Right? That we want to reach before they get to the youth study center. And I think that's important because a lot of times people will reach out to me, well, my son's here and here, can you help in this way? And it's like, why didn't you call me when you know he had a gun in your house? And this escalated into something else. The other thing that I want to address really quickly, because I thought about it when Bilal Qayyum was talking, I took a group of young people out to dinner because I just wanted to know what was going on from them and hear it from them. One of the young men said to me, and I'm like, I'm considered his aunt. He said, I'm Farida. He said, we don't have a village. These kids don't have a village anymore. You know, you guys were raised with a village. He said, they don't have a village. And that's what it connects to the gangs that I did not know that we had so many gangs in Philadelphia, but they're looking for community. And if you don't have, we did have a village. Your neighbor was part of your village. Now we don't even know who our neighbors are. So it's a lot of work that we have to do as individuals, as families, as community members. And it just starts with us. We can't wait for anybody to do this work. We have to do the work ourselves.
I agree. And as Muslims, we know what we're supposed to do. We know what we're supposed to represent, and we know, what kind of examples we're supposed to set for our family. It was a big thing when you left the house, you represented your family. And those, Muslims look different today. I'll put it that way. But we need
Yesterday,
to get the basics.
Yesterday, the imam said at Clara Muhammad, he said, you don't truly believe until you want for your sister or brother what you want for yourself. And I said, I need to get right. I gotta get right. I do. Yeah.
But there's one last hand, and I want to bring him in. Brother Bilal Hassan. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa salam. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Alhamdulillah. First and foremost, I'd like to thank you all sisters for hosting such a much needed space for healing and for resource sharing. So may Allah continue to bless you all, bless us all to come out from this strong and sense of unity and a sense of some sense of togetherness. I just want to quickly just share. I'm not from Philly, but I frequent Philadelphia quite often with my family. I went to school there. I went to Lincoln University in Pennsylvania. So a lot of my friends live in Philly, and we were thinking about going down there for Eid on Wednesday, and my sister kept asking me, she wants to say, I want to go to Claremont. I want to go to Claremont. I was like, sis, you don't even get up that early to go. I mean, we might as well stay local. We ended up in Newark. But my point was, we was at Eid in Newark, New Jersey, and I got a text saying something about happened in Philadelphia. And just my mood just totally changed. Like, I lost my appetite. I didn't want to eat anything. It was very weighted on my mind that I just started texting like friends that I knew in the area or live in the area. And a lot of them, two of the brothers I know very closely, they weren't there with their children, and their children were there. And alhamdulillah, they're safe, but I know physically they're safe, but mentally they're not. They're not safe. And it just weighed on me very, these last few days. It's like, man, subhanAllah, that could have been me with my mother who walks around sometimes with a cane, and like how would that even work? Like, she can't run like that. So no one's thinking about the elderly and the women and children. Like, it's just, and the scene is just being so descriptive. It's almost like a movie. You don't think nothing of it. Like, at Eid, like when someone said it to me, it's like, yeah, they're shooting at the Eid. I said, they're shooting on Eid day? Oh, Eid, come on. What I'm saying? And, it was just weighing heavy on me, and it still is. It's very hard to picture it. It's just very hard to picture it. And, the women and children are traumatized, the adults are traumatized, and people may not feel safe going back to the park. I'm just being real. And, my mother even told me she doesn't feel comfortable going to Philly. And, that's a hard feeling to hear. It's a very hard feeling to hear. And, I have a group of brothers that, I'm going to be sitting with from Philadelphia, to talk about this, just get our thoughts out, our feelings out. But something has to be done. This is totally inexcusable. And, someone could have got their life taken that day. Allah blessed us to not have life taken. And, may Allah bless all the first responders, everyone who responded quickly. And even this officer who disabled one of the young men or one of the young people, that person is still alive. Person could have been dead. It's just, oh man, Allah, may Allah make it easy on us and give us protection, continue to protect us. But it is a state of emergency, not just in Philadelphia. I don't want this to be, I tell people, don't just make this Philly, because it ain't. It's New York, it's Newark. They're still healing from what happened with the imam there.
Mm-hmm.
It's real. It's Chicago, it's all of our urban communities. We're breathing over this. And it's just the scope is always zoomed into Philly. You know what I'm saying? But it's not just Philly. And I'll tell the brothers and sisters, if Philly gets it right, it can be reciprocated all across the country where there's Black Muslims. I'm telling you, because we're a force, and people are waiting for us to take up the leadership and really do some things and offer our services and offer the solutions. We have it. And I agree with what you all said. We have what we need to really make some changes. So thank you all again for providing this space, this resource tonight. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
You're very welcome. I want to be mindful of all of your time. And just want to say, I think that it's really important, especially when what was shared is that if we don't sort of understand and process the acute, we don't get rid of it. It still stays with us, right? It shows up in different ways. And so even when people are feeling like really short-tempered, irritable, just kind of too quick to respond to any kind of provocation, and that leads to altercations. And, we have to recognize how, even when it's chronic, we're still on edge in a lot of ways. And so young people are feeling it, older people are feeling it, the babies are feeling it. And I think what might be particularly disturbing about this is when it happened, right? Mm-hmm. And so even if before we could say, well, at least for 24 hours on Eid, right, there's going to be a pause, right? Mm-hmm. And in this instance, it calls into question, well, what is sacred, right? Where's the line? Is there no line, right? And that can be that feeling of just being always vulnerable, being exacerbated by the trauma, right? Like there is no safety anywhere. I'm not even safe at the Masjid, right? Just imagine someone saying, I just need to stay in my house, but we know you can get shot in your house. The police have done this, right? And so the safety that we create can be also in something that looks like asking a person, how's your day? Right? Like just some kind of interaction, a word that is spoken. And we're going to be mindful when we do this, but when we talk about big solutions, they actually start with, like, have we had conversations with the young people in our own lives, right? When I'm talking to my children about, like, what are you hearing on the news? Like, what is kind of on TikTok, right? Like, what are the apps that they're on? How are they speaking to one another? How do we understand that? Whether or not we agree, like, how we understand ways to engage young people in a way that feels like they can sense that we're genuinely curious. We're not trying to we're not trying to say, well, back in my day, they don't care. They're like, I don't know what you was doing in 1985. I don't know what you was doing in 1992, right? That's over. That feels like 100 years ago. But how can we understand what their lives look like now? And honestly, when we take that moment to be curious, I think it also makes us humble, because their lives are not like our lives, right? And so knowing, like, yes, if I went out and I was in public, I was representing my Umi, I was representing my family, and somebody was going to pull me up. The fact that they don't have that now should make us all very sad, right? It's not their fault. Something else happened before they were born or when they were younger, so that they don't feel that sense of community, right? And there's, a saying that we might have all heard before, that the young people will burn down the village to feel its warmth, right? If they are not engaged, if they don't feel cared for, they'll burn it down. And so if we're all feeling some of that, like a little singed on the edges, it should really make us think about, one, let's start with, who are the children and the young people in our lives? Do they know that they're cared for? Do they know that they're loved? Do we tell them, or do we assume, right? Or do they feel like, you know what, when I'm talking to my older, my 19 and my 21-year-old, they're like, the world is literally falling apart. It's burning, right? I don't know what my life is going to look like in 20 years. Well, I have air to breathe. Like, you have climate change, you have violence. So they're feeling kind of like an existential kind of hopelessness, but they need to know that we love them and that we care for them, right? And the things that we do and the sacrifices we make are so that they can have something like a good life, right? And so I want to thank you all, because I know you all care, right? And not just because you're a professional, but you're caregivers, right? You have people in your life, you're believers, right? You're committed to your community and you want to see it thrive. And so I want everyone who joined us to know that if you have questions, submit it to one of these very capable, expert Black Muslimas, right? To answer your question, like, I've been thinking about therapy, but I don't know, I'm kind of afraid. Like, these are the kinds of questions that we want to be able to provide answers to help the community along in a healing journey that we desperately, desperately need. So this recording will be sent out. Another sister, Sania Brown, wasn't able to join us, but she is the founder of Just Breathe, LLC. She is also a therapist, and she has offered, for those who have registered, a free grief journal that she's going to take with her. She's going to drop off at Philadelphia Masjid. She's also offering free 20-minute short Zoom consultations for people that may have one-on-one questions that they don't want to ask publicly, but just as a way to talk to an expert. So I'm also going to include her calendar link in the summary of this call. So if you're struggling, if you're feeling confused, you're not really quite sure what is happening, she's going to be offering that space, that one-on-one space, to those who need it within the next 2 weeks. So thank you all for joining. Thank you all for being here. Again, I'm always as upsetting and as, just disturbing as this is. I felt actually a sense of pride, right? My community has what it needs right now. What we must do is continue to call on the law and, pull all of these pieces of love and of expertise and of commitment together. But I think we should feel what we're feeling and also know that Allah got us, we got each other. And, when we stay committed to that mission, I actually think there's nothing that is impossible. So alhamdulillah for all of you and for your expertise. Apologize in advance for the flood of calls that might come, but I know you all you're on the front line, you're frontline responders, and it's because it's your heart, right? That's at stake. It's the community that's at stake. So alhamdulillah. Is there any sort of last takeaway or reflection or comment that you would like to share before we close for tonight?
The only thing I want to say is there will be more resources in regards to this tragedy coming up. I would encourage you all to follow our social media pages, websites, all of the things that Sister Kameelah offered. That's the best way for us to reach you guys to get the information out. If there's anything that you feel like you need, feel free to email, inbox, all of those things, and we'll try to do our best to make sure that that we make it happen. We are right now a panel full of women. Men are involved. I saw a few of them at Juma yesterday and was like, I did reach out to you. I am going to reach out to you. So inshallah that we will have men on some of these groups that we're trying to hold an in-person town hall meeting to get people in the room to express how they are feeling.
I just want to say, last final words is that, the other day when we first got on a call, I was like, oh, I'm just feeling so traumatized myself. I'm feeling hopeless. And I have to just remember that I am the hope and that you are the hope. And if you're on this call, that be the hope, because being the hope is a part of being the solution. And also want to say that, you know, in regards to the men, like, you know, as far as with Black Men Hill, the brother was a Sharif. If you are interested in going out to talk to the youth, one of the things that we were really intentional in doing about building our gun violence program is pairing up not just clinicians. I talk like a therapist. I'm a nerd all day. I use terminology. I don't know how to talk like the kids, but we are looking for, like, we are desperately looking for. It's an organization that is built by women, but like we are not centered in it. Like people don't even really know me or know that I run Black Men Hill, and that's fine because it's about the community, right? It's about the brothers. But if you are on a call and you're a man and you want to go out and talk to the youth, then contact me, pair up with us. I would love to have you come out to one of these groups. And we also would love to do some of our clinical talk and training for you. Like if you want to go out and be the relatable one to the community, we want to do that. We want to pair up the clinicians with our community members so that we can work together. Because I mean, we all in this together. We got to go back to it. It does take a village. And you know, I just invite everybody out here on this call to be a part of the village.
I guess my closing words would be, show yourself some grace, be kind to yourselves. We're all going through it. Like Tasnim said, it's a hard time out here, and healing isn't linear. So it's not like you feel good Monday, you got to feel better on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Oh, I don't feel better by Friday, I'm done. It doesn't really work like that. You might have a good day, might not have a bad day, but the goal is for your good days to outweigh your bad days. And by doing that, reaching out to your community, trying to reach out for resources. And again, these women, I think we can turn some things around. Inshallah.
Inshallah, inshallah. So with that, I actually wanted to close with, you know, one, always lifting up the name and the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, always putting our faith and trust in him when things feel unmanageable and senseless and we cannot sort of comprehend what's next. Sometimes it is prayer, right? It's, let me just make some 2 rakats and go to sleep, right? Like there's nothing more that I can do on this day, but Allah can do it all. And so when we remember that, it should feel like a relief, right? I don't know, but Allah knows, right? And that might be just a solution for that day that provides some grounding and comfort. But I also want to share these words from Alice Walker. And she wrote, maybe be connected to each other, maybe know the range and depth of feelings in ourselves and in each other. There is vulnerability, fear, love, rage, hatred, compassion, courage, despair, and hope in ourselves, each other, and the world. May we know our most authentic feelings and voice them when we speak. May we tap into soul and spirit when we are silent together. May we form and become a circle. Be silent and feel the clasp and connection of hands and heart. Then each in turn speak for yourself and listen to each other. Put judgment aside. Remember that anything voiced that you want to silence may be a silenced part of yourself. May the healing begin in us. So inshallah, may the healing begin in us. May this tragedy, this violence, this really upsetting event be the catalyst for something greater. May it be just the beginning of something that we could not have fathomed before, but that it doesn't become a defining moment in the community. It's just the beginning of something that hopefully provides, again, a sense of meaning, a sense of comfort, and also begins to repair some of the disconnections that may have formed because of the trauma that leaves our young people especially feeling isolated and alone and misunderstood and forgotten. So inshallah, may this be the beginning, may it be the beginning of healing and of something more and greater, inshallah. All right, alaikum. Thank you all so much. Just deep gratitude for all of you.
Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone.
Wa alaikum.